So my name is David Werfel. I'm an EMT with Sun City Fire Department. I've been an EMT about 10 years now. I've been with the fire department about 5.5 years. And I enjoy helping people. I got into the business of helping people, and I've always been a people person. So I really enjoy being around people.
Did you work private EMS, or who did you work for before the fire department?
Yeah, before I got hired with the fire department, I did private EMS and with a private ambulance company, both 911 and inter-facility.
Okay.
And so I kind of got a little experience in there and then wanted to move on to bigger things.
What are some everyday mental health struggles that first responders face?
Emotions is the big thing that comes to mind. We are trained to check our emotions at the door, whether we're checking those emotions from home or checking those emotions from work. When we come home, we tend to let our emotions get in the way. And so some of the things for me personally, that the struggles that I faced was anger, depression, anxiety. I don't really like being in crowds. It was just never my cup of tea. And in the field we're sometimes in crowds talking to strangers. Addiction is another big one. A lot of people try to cope with the struggles that they're facing with some sort of addiction, whether that's drugs, alcohol, retail therapy.
So you talked about kind of checking your emotions at the door. Why do we do that? Where does that come from?
We do it because it's what we're told to do a lot of times. And really for me, the thing that comes to mind when I think about checking your emotions at the door is the stigma of, you're a tough guy. You work for the fire department. You're a hero. You can't be viewed as, you can't cry. You can't be depressed. And, when you come home from work, you can't be angry, depressed, anxious, any of those things, because you're coming home to your kids, and your kids view you as a hero. You're out there helping people. And so you kind of have to find that balance between masking it and dealing with it. And it's a very real problem that I found myself going down that rabbit hole of, hey, I walk through that door, How
do you transition? How do you go from EMS to dad? How do you transition? What does that look like for you?
For me, it's been an adjustment. One of the things that has really helped me through this and being able to transition and check my emotions and regulate has been therapy. Tips and tricks that I've learned in therapy, deep breathing. They say music is helpful. Music is therapy. So I just flip through the radio stations on the way home, and I'm bound to find a song from, Run DMC or something, and I just start jamming, and I, kind of find my mood changing a little bit, and before I know it, I'm home. And for me, we have a Ring camera, and when the kids are home and they hear that Ring camera go off, it's now, for me, I make sure, I used to pull in the driveway, then open the garage. Now I open the garage, pull in the driveway, so I could see the kids running up to me saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, we're glad you're home." They're excited to see me, and really just kind of give me a renewed sense of energy and a reminder. And after that phase kind of wears off and the kids are done with me, usually about 30 seconds or so before they make it back to playing with Legos, I come in and, my wife just says, "How was your shift?" And I've learned to just talk about it and just say, it was a rough one, it was a busy one, and just talk about it, get it off my chest, and not let it consume me throughout the day anymore.
Yeah.
And I still struggle. Sometimes I come home and it's hard. We get off at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we might run a code at 7 a.m. or a patient may have pissed us off at 7 a.m. and now we gotta, try to transition, and you have to find the balance in what makes you happy. And
so all these coping mechanisms, everything that you're doing to get better, who taught you that? You learned that on your own? Did that come from the fire department?
Absolutely not. Like I said before, the one thing that the fire service has been unfortunately known for is not talking about it. And so I found myself in that situation where I hit bottom, and I'd had enough. My emotions consumed me, and they got in between, me and my kids, my wife, the community. I was losing friends, and I was done. And I reached out, and the first place I went kind of gave me some hope, and then I got sent through several hoops and hurdles, and was still struggling until I reached out to the Compassion Alliance as my last ditch effort and said, hey, I need help. And through therapy is where I learned it, being honest and open and vulnerable and just talking about it.
What made you reach out to why Compassion Alliance?
The biggest thing is EMS isn't covered under Craig Tiger, and so I was kind of between a rock and a hard spot, because for me financially, I didn't want to have another burden to worry about, and so I put myself in a spot where I reached a point where I need help, but I was still a little bit inside of me was saying, you can't afford it, and just hearing these things about, it's not worth the money, and just playing these good versus evil games. You got the parrot on one shoulder. And I actually had a battalion chief that recently retired that caught wind of what I was going through, and she called me into her office, which is never a good thing when you get called in the chief's office, and so I voluntarily went in there and just opened up about what I was going through with her, and shared the frustrations and where I was at. And she said, you know what, I have somebody for you. And I looked at her and I said, oh great, another stupid resource. And she goes, no, this one is good, you'll like them, they'll get you the help. And I said, I'm gonna take your word for it, and I'm gonna call them tomorrow. And she said, okay. And I walked out of her office and was still feeling unsure. And I got off shift the next morning, and I put an inquiry in on the Compassion Alliance website, thinking, hey, here I go, just put it in there and hope for the best. And if they answer, great. If they don't, I guess I'm just gonna suffer in silence. And 20 minutes later, Tony called me, and I felt a sense of peace come over me as Tony just said those words, I got you. And when I heard those words from Tony, I knew they were genuine, and I didn't know Tony from Adam. And I talked for 45 minutes with Tony, and he kept reassuring me, I got you. We're gonna get you the help. We're invested in you. You have my word. And we started the process with Compassion Alliance.
As you go through this healing journey, what were some of the benefits you started seeing? What were things you started noticing?
Part of my story is when I hit bottom, I was alone, I was angry, I was depressed. The trauma that I'd experienced had just compounded, and I was done. And so I was done, and I blew up at my family, and I realized that's not who I want to be. And for me, one of the biggest things is my wife stopped me in the kitchen, and for the first time with tears rolling down her eyes said, I love you, and I want you to get help. I want my husband back. I want the kids want their dad back. You've lost joy in life. And for me, that was huge. I'm a dad, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a coach. And for me, that's when it clicked. I need to do what I need to do to find joy in life again, find joy in being a dad, stop making the bike rides a burden, make them bonding time. And so through going through all of this, finding joy in the healing has brought me joy. Being able to coach my daughter's soccer team without worrying about, do I enjoy this anymore or not? That was a big thing for me. A couple of the other things that I've discovered through this process and through the healing has been the ability to recognize what triggers me, and not only that, but take that a step further. And some of those things that were triggering me, recognizing further that some of that stuff is silly and I don't have control over it. You know, nobody likes to sit in traffic, and I was one of those people that didn't like to sit in traffic, especially after a 48-hour shift. And slow drivers, they tend to make you mad. And for me, just really self-regulating. And my therapist said something to me in one of my sessions that, while I was, overwhelmed and taking everything in, she was the type that liked to give me homework, and I don't like homework. But she said, I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to work on self-regulation. And I just looked at her like, not going to happen. I don't do homework. And so what I did, or what she said to me was, the more you are regulated, the more the environment around you becomes regulated. So work on being regulated. And
wow, that's kind of a truth bomb right there.
Yeah, and I just was like, okay, what do you say to that? And so I'm like, all right, so she kind of gave me tips on things to regulate, going to the driving range, getting outside, fresh air, things that, you could do by yourself, yoga. I'm not really a yoga person. I'm not flexible at all, but I tried it once. Exercise is big, and for me, aside from taking my mental health back, once I got my mental health kind of checked in and regulated, I started noticing that I was physically feeling better. And for me, that was huge, to feel physically better, sleep better, eat better, all of that. Because for me, I want to be around for my kids.
Do you have joy in your life now?
Absolutely. That for me, finding that joy in life again was making the decision to step back and be a parent instead of a coach. And it was a hard decision for me, but one of the best things I ever did, to be able to not focus on a team of 11 and focus on the team that's a priority for me, and that's my family, and ultimately on the soccer field, that's my daughter. My boys love playing Legos, and for me, nothing brings me more joy than just building cars and breaking stuff, and they break something and rebuild it, and I kind of relate that to, we're built a certain way, but ultimately at some point or another we break, and we have to make that choice. Are we going to rebuild ourselves the same way, or are we going to try to make it better? And so for me, I've found myself to be a lot more joyful, finding joy in friendships and community, and really just reevaluating what brings me happiness and who brings good into my life and really cares about my well-being, and not just my well-being, but my family. Yeah. And for me, that was a tough process to go through, but absolutely 1,000% worth it.
Did your family notice any changes? Did they share anything with you? Did your kids ever say anything, your wife, about who you were becoming through your healing journey? Did that ever come up?
It actually came up a couple times. I like to do a lot of reflection, and so for me personally, I didn't want to not talk about it, and so I would just ask my wife periodically, hey, how do you think I'm doing? Are you seeing the changes? Because you get that negative doubt in your head, and sometimes it's just the lies from the enemy just saying you're not good enough and you're not doing it the right way. And for me, my way to combat that was just asking my wife. There's nobody in this world that's going to be more honest with you than kids and your spouse. And so I would ask her, and she would be honest, and she said, she would tell me, yeah, you're doing a lot better. You've had a few moments, and as as my healing journey went on, the moments became less and less, the outbursts. And I would share with her, this is what I learned in therapy, so you're going to have to bear with me. Coming home from therapy, it was hard sometimes because I was just mentally overloaded. But I would talk about it. She would ask the most difficult question: how was therapy? And I would just start talking, and kind of let her know kind of what I was processing, and it gave her an understanding of what I'm dealing with, and kind of a guide to go off of hey, this is your homework or whatever. But one of the coolest things for me through all of this, other than my wife, was my 6-year-old son. We've had some issues with him behaviorally, and so we started taking him to therapy, and he didn't like it. And one day after therapy, it was around lunchtime, and so I had the opportunity, just he and I, to have lunch and kind of talk to him about therapy, and I had the opportunity to share in my dad words to kind of make it 6-year-old friendly. And I said the words to my 6-year-old across the table: buddy, Daddy goes to therapy. And that was the first time I'd ever talked to my kids, one of my kids, about what I've been going through. And to see the look on his face that his dad, his hero, somebody he looks up to, goes to therapy, for me, was refreshing. And it really renewed my optimism to continue treatment and therapy, and just encourage him, because we all got our own issues. And whether you're 6, 60, or 16, you're going to face something. And to see him make that connection, that in his eyes, I'm his hero, but I'm his hero who's going from hurting to healing, was huge for me.
How cool is that you can change your legacy?
Being the son of a first responder, my dad never really talked about it. And when I started going through my struggles and my traumas and emotions and alphabet letter diagnosis, for me, I didn't really have anybody to turn to, or felt like I didn't have anybody to turn to. And the first person that I talked to was him. And he said, hey, I support you. I've been there. And I don't know his mental health journey, whether he's gotten treatment or anything, but to just hear those words from my dad, that you're going to be all right, I'm proud of you.
Those are powerful words to hear from a dad.
Yeah. And in such a dark moment that I felt like a failure and just lowest of lows, to hear those words, I'm proud of you, was refreshing.
Yeah, and you're sharing those words with your boy.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Do you feel that going through therapy and talking to somebody, do you feel like you walked away with tangible tools to put in your tool belt that will help you from here on out?
1,000%. Like I said, my therapist gave me homework, and I hate homework, but it was some of the most helpful homework that I've ever done, including schooling. Because for me, like I said, the best piece of homework that I got and tool in my toolbox was being able to regulate. Aside from the deep breathing exercises and all of those things, they're helpful to me. They're helpful to my brothers and sisters that put on a uniform, but they're also helpful to my kids. Kids are struggling with emotions, and they're angry, and it's silly, but tell them, hey, take a deep breath. We do a thing we call it blowing out the candles, where we have a pretend cake, and we tell them blow out the candles. And, we relate it, and it works. Regulating my emotions and doing breathing exercises and talking about it and recognizing, the list can go on, but those are just some of the tools that I said, hey, these are valuable ones that I'm going to put in my toolbox to help my kids, my wife, my brothers and sisters that wear the uniform. Because I suffered in silence too long, and like I said, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. And that was my biggest takeaway in all of this, was really recognizing that it's okay to not be okay, and to transition from hurting to healing. You can be a hero anywhere along that line, but in the eyes of your kids, you're always going to be a hero. And for me, I wanted to be a better hero, and so taking those tools and putting them into practice has really grounded me in a sense of being able to stay joyful. You know, I'm not 1,000% better than I was, but I'm 100% better than I was, if that makes sense. And every day is a new journey. I wake up refreshed, but I know that every day I'm gonna have some sort of struggle, and I'm gonna have to use that toolbox. You know, whether it's deep breathing exercises, regulation, or whatever it might be, to stay in the healing phase. I want to express a truly heartfelt thank you to Tony and Melody and the team at the Compassion Alliance for being there for me in my darkest hour, my lowest point, and being just that beacon of light for me and my family. But I also want to offer encouragement and just encourage you. If you're seeing this, I don't know what platforms this video is going to end up on, but if you're seeing this video, just know that it's okay to not be okay. It's time to break the stigma. And if you're struggling with anything, get some help. I'll be the first to admit, as a male, I mentioned being a hero. One of the biggest things I had to overcome was putting my pride aside. And once you put that pride aside and get that help, you will start to see those changes in your family, in the relationships, in your work life. So if you're struggling, I just really encourage you, say something. Or if you know somebody struggling, say something. I mentioned that I felt alone. Life's too short to feel alone. We got to walk alongside our brothers and sisters, you know, get in those trenches with them, you know, and be available for them, and just listen sometimes. And that for me was huge, to have somebody listen. And so again, I just want to thank Tony and Melody and the team at the Compassion Alliance for not just viewing me as a statistic or a number, but really investing in me. And furthermore, just being available. You know, I've texted Tony several times, you know, since I've started treatment about various things, and he's made it known that I'm not just another person that used services. I'm a friend. I'm a brother to him, and like I said earlier, when Tony said I got you, Tony lives that out. When the Compassion Alliance say they have you, they do.
We survive solely on donors that donate and care deeply about you and a whole bunch of your brothers and sisters. What would your message be to those donors?
Thank you. Thank you for your investment in not just me, but the men and women who put on a uniform, and their families, and those that have retired. Your investment goes a long way in the community for those that serve, because if we're not in a good place mentally, we're not going to be able to be there when people need us. And so for those donors that may see this, or anybody that's considering donating, thank you from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of my family and my department.